This is Sam Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and now Twitter channels with Queen of the Static Opera. So thank you for showing up for your first interview.
Thanks for inviting me.
So what we like to do is do kind of behind the music type interviews where we talk to an artist about what they're all about. But what we're going to also do is let you hear Queen of the Static Opera before we get into the in-depth interview. But we do have one sponsor we want to mention, and that's Newsly.me, and use coupon code GHOST2021. That's still valid. Newsly is an iOS and Android app where it reads the news back to you in a natural voice, and you can stop scrolling and start listening. So use coupon code GHOST2021 and go to newsly.me or the App Store to pick that up. And now we're going to what we also want to do today is we've got your video, which is actually like a YouTube lyric type video queued up.
Okay,
you
cool.
have it here, and it's basically it's you're doing a cover of Warm Leatherette, right? Maybe you want to how that came about before we play it.
Me and I do Queen of the Static Opera with one other person. We saw the Trent Reznor, Peter Murphy cover of this song. And obviously we knew about Depeche Mode and Mute has a huge legacy and stuff. And I don't know, we kind of just decided to do it randomly one day and it came together really nicely. Not much to say about it, I guess. It's a cover. So yeah, I really appreciate the original writer of the song and everything. And he's said he likes my cover, which was a huge honor for me too. Cause he's just
awesome.
He's done Nick Cave and Depeche Mode. Those are people he discovered. So it was really cool when he said he liked it. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, that's very encouraging when you do a cover and the people that were responsible for it tell you that they like it. I mean, I think that's gold.
Well, especially in this genre too, because it's he's like a synth innovator, and so then we're doing synth music, so it's wow, that's incredible. That's he's this genre is so new if you actually think about it. So it's yeah, that's a legendary person. So yeah, it was awesome. I'm happy about it.
Okay, so we're actually going to play some comments from some of your fans. We'll put it up there. Actually shows up, but we're going to go right to it. We're going to put you on mute while we play it, and then we'll come back. All right?
Sure. I'm going to try to host this channel.
So here we go.
before you die.
So now we're back. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah.
So that's a really good. I think that's an awesome cover. I can see why you had the praise for it, because it really it's a different take on it, but it has a good feel to it.
Yeah, a lot of people really like it. Even like it feels like it's been like people, if anybody, if like a random media of any kind finds any of my music, they always go to that cover. So I guess they really like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it stands out. It's just you did something really. You did it justice, and you had your own spin to it with the way your style. So it kind of brings out the style, and we wanted people to hear you. So now they've got a good idea of what you sound like. Because sometimes we used to do interviews and we didn't actually play the music from the bands, and it was like, well, people wonder what we're talking about. So one of the first things we like to ask in the artist that comes on the show is like, when did you first get into music? Like, what age did you think that is the start of your journey into music?
Well, I always wanted to do it. My dad was a guitar player pretty professionally, actually. So I had grown up with like a lot of really cool like rock star legacy photos, like with my parents' photos. I meant stories, but both of my parents were in a band and stuff. So
Okay, so it was like
I
natural.
remember I tried to like play the piano. It was like the first thing I tried to play because we had a piano in my basement and my parents would have band practice, and I would try to like make up songs without really knowing how to play, and I'd play like the xylophone and stuff. Just like weird little toys. I wanted to be in the band. So I guess
cool
from
to
there
have
when
parents. I think it's good to have parents that encourage you, but a lot of people look at the arts and they're like, well, you can't do anything with that, so they don't encourage you, right? So it's cool to have parents that actually were in it, and so that must have been a really a great lift for you wanting to be in it, because sometimes you have children of musicians, maybe they don't want to be musicians, but in your case, you did feel it. You felt like you wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like my sister, she didn't, I mean, she loves music, but she wasn't like trying to play music. So it is like me, I just wanted to do it. Like, yeah, she had theoretically the same opportunity to try to learn it, but I wanted to do it. Um and yeah, my dad and I were really close. And so he was like the really serious musician. I mean, my mom did music too. Like my mom's a really good bass player, but my dad had like a lot of really amazing like rock star legacy stories that just like made me really want to become a musician, I guess. Yeah.
Well, he was a professional musician, part of the Minneapolis Sound, right? From what your
Yes.
write-up is.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He yeah, he knew Prince when he was a teenager. He opened up for like Tina Turner, and like he had like a really incredible like career. And I hope someday I can have a career as incredible as he had. Honestly, that's what I'm trying to aim for, because I'm still not quite there yet. But he does inspire me for sure.
That's interesting, because the whole Minneapolis Sound, I mean, that's kind of why I'm a synthesist. You can see all my synths behind me.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I heard.
But it's like, yeah, Prince was like one of my big inspiration, besides like Parliament, Funkadelic, and Herbie Hancock and people like that. I grew up listening to like Stevie Wonder, and like, oh, I want to do that. And
Yeah.
my dad wasn't a musician, but he had an amazing record collection. He had like all the Motown, all the Stax, all this jazz. and he just had like a really nice turntable, good hi-fi system, and he liked to listen to albums all the way through, and he would like encourage us to like, yeah, this is cool. That you sit down on a Saturday night and listen to Brubeck or listen to Sun Ra or go listen to Funkadelic, and he would listen to the whole thing and then turn off the TV and say like you should check this out. And I thought that was really cool. And he was never a musician, but he was a fan. He was like a music fan, and I think that's kind of interesting. I picked up on it, like the way you picked up with Dad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my dad was also like really good at being a fan too. So that was another thing too. Like he had just like this endless like encyclopedia of like musical knowledge. So like he passed on, but like before he passed on, we were always like talking about music. And that's probably like, yeah, that's probably a huge factor in how I learned like what being an artist really means, which is like some people think they kind of want to be an artist, but but they don't really. It's like so much more
Yeah,
than the surface. You know what I mean? It takes a lot
yeah, I
of
think like,
dedication.
yeah, that's
A
the
lot of
kind of next question I get into it is like when you're talking to creative, artists like yourself, like you can be a musician, but then you could be a musician that's like a studio musician, or you could be a
yeah,
concert pianist, go to a
different avenues.
conservatory. Like, yeah, what made you realize that you had a talent and you wanted to write your own material? Because some people will get into it and they'll be a singer and they'll work with other people who write the music. But the singer songwriter has always made me very interested in singer songwriters because I kind of grew up in the 70s, a child of the 70s, and that's the age kind of the singer songwriter. And
Hmm.
that to me was like that's like the complete musician, because then you feel like they're telling you a story that's a lot of who they are. Because it wasn't like in the old world, you know, Sinatra was singing songs that other people gave him, and the old style music in the 50s and the 40s, like it was singers didn't write the songs. In most cases, other people wrote the songs. So, what made you want to be like a singer songwriter?
I totally agree with what you're saying. And I have thought about this a lot. When I guess, like I said, I tried to play piano at first, and I would play piano while my dad just would like play guitar, and I would kind of try to play along. Um, then I learned guitar chords, and I learned I could like put together songs, and I was like 10. And that's when I just started writing songs. And I think I started writing songs. Honestly, I'd always kind of written like poems and stuff, and I tried to sing them always. So it was kind of natural to me. I thought like you had to write songs. Like I thought that was just
Yeah.
part of it. And my dad really emphasized also like that's a really important part of it. I mean, my dad was a songwriter. Like he was a good songwriter, but besides being like a really good guitar player, he actually like wrote the song in his band that had like a Billboard song. He had like a Billboard 200 song in like the 600 like 60s. And he wrote the
Mhm.
song when he was like
That's cool.
19. So like
That's awesome.
I think he was always like all those skills like singing and guitar and drums, that's good and dandy and great, but like a song is like the most important part. So that's what he always kind of said to me, I guess. So that's probably why I got into it. And I was really good at like with words and things like that,
Hmm.
and I still am. So I have stories to tell and stuff like that.
Well, I think
And
that's the core. Yeah, sorry. Keep
no,
going.
I was just gonna say, yeah, he gave me confidence in my songwriting too. I think like he noticed I had a talent for it almost immediately. So
Mhm.
I just kept going on that path, and I'm still a songwriter to this day.
Well, that's cool that he inspired you, encouraged you, and gave you kind of that path. And also, like, being a child of the 70s is like the Beatles were kind of like, and even today, when I interview bands and artists, they always talk about the Beatles just because of their songcraft of Lennon, McCartney, and Harris, and even Ringo Starr. There's the kind of classic power pop, or, pop music that can just transcend and be so popular, but have some depth. And I think that's the whole core of being a songwriter is like you put together a song like the way the Motown guys used to put songs together. Just they had those beats, they had the lyrics, they had the vocals.
Yeah.
Like when you're trying to craft a song and it's got the structure of a classic song structure, even whether it's pop or soul or any of the big art genres. It's just like it. Sometimes today it feels like some bands are kind of stuck in like clips or just the hook, and not thinking about the kind of classic sound structure that you get from the late 60s and 70s, but I digress.
No, I agree, and I think it's funny because I never think about structure anymore because it's so like in tune with me. Like I know like how long a verse goes, how long a chorus goes. Like I don't need to think about it because I've been doing it for so long. But I'm guessing my dad must have taught me when I was young because I don't know how I figured it out because I still know it. But yeah, I totally agree.
Today we're living in an age where there's so many different genres where you have, like EDM and trance and hip hop, where sometimes the structures are, you never know. Because I mean, hip hop, you could be coming from a jazz place, you could be coming from a funk place, so it could have the same kind of structure. But either types of forms where they're stuck into the drop, they're stuck in a kind of a repetitive structure, even if you get into like
unless you're like sorry. I didn't mean to
No, but what I'm saying is like I think there's a lot of cool things and there's modern music you can get into. You can say, well, that's the way it is. Trance has that certain structure, or trip wave or EDM or any of the big beats, whatever. There's all this structure, but I can go back to new wave, and I love the kind of structure of new wave music. Being a synthesist, it's kind of like, oh wow. I heard Joy Division, they became New Order, Depeche Mode named, like The Cure, all those bands. It just felt really interesting. They took that kind of post-punk spirit. They were coming out of the Clash and the Sex Pistols and even Brian Eno stuff in the 70s, and then finding a way to not do what Yes and Funkadelic did, which was do like Grateful Dead 10-minute, 15-minute songs, but actually create pop songs. Songs that were 3 or 4 minutes long with those progressive techniques from those synthesizers and being able to, bring funk and other things in. I think that was what's cool about new wave is like people think, oh, it's all synth, but there's a lot of interesting bass lines, really cool guitar that is kind of post-punk. It's got punk aesthetic to it. And I think that's been, what I always love about the 80s was the kind of melting pot of all the different styles.
I agree. I love 80s song structure. I think it was like the pinnacle of like great songwriting from like a structural place, like how the vocals were, like the chord progressions. Like I'm not super into the I have respect for people who do like the 10-minute long, like complicated instrumental music and stuff, but it's not what I like listen to. And it's not really what I enjoy. Like I love 80s music though, so I so agree. Like new wave is amazing. I love that stuff.
Well, I like the fact that they were able to take the same, take the mini Moogs and take the Hammond organs and take all those things that the Yes and Sticks and all the bands were doing and find a way to, shorten it and make it more poppy or get the hook tighter. I think that's where Prince has taken stuff from like a band like Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk is very experimental, but he took their kind of vibe and it made it more digestible. And even took the Parliament Funkadelic vibe where they could go 10 minutes. And he brought down the same kind of funk, but brought it down to a song like Kiss. Or, and, wow, he's like, that's funky as anything Funkadelic would do, but it was way shorter than anything they would have done. But it gets to the point. And I think that's what the cool thing about the 80s is you can kind of get to the point and still have a lot of experimentation from the progressive side of the music.
I think that's kind of what sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I keep doing this. I think you're ending and then you're starting. I was gonna say, I agree. And it's funny because kind of like Queen of Static Opera as a project conceptually, instead of like taking like mixtures of like kind of like the 80s stuff, but then also like experimental like noise music and like making it like pop. That's kind of what the project is. And it's really weird and it's hard. Like it's kind of strange because I don't really know where I fit in like the internet hierarchy of like where you belong. Because like a lot of the like more like noise metal people, they want to hear like songs without hooks and stuff like that, and songs without clean vocals. And I'm like trying to do this noise pop thing is what I call it, which is like has clean vocals and hooks and is melodic still, but like also like noisy, you know what I mean? So it's
it's kind of that Trent Reznor kind of 9 Inch Nails noise, but a little more poppy.
Yeah, so pretty much.
Like you got the Grimes kind of reference, And we're
Yeah.
going to talk about like reference points. But Trent Reznor is a big influence for me. I use a lot of tools in my synth design. I use a lot of make noise, Eurorack type stuff to try to get that weird dissonance. I like one thing about synths that is interesting with what I like about Trent Reznor is like synth pop when it started. You get bands like The Cure and they kind of poppy, and then you get a
Yeah.
little more darkness for a band. Well, a band like Joy Division is a little dark. And then you get the Depeche Mode is a little dark, but Trent Reznor takes that and it has a kind of punk edge, like a death metal edge, but it's synthesizers
Yeah,
that are
pretty
showing
much.
that you can have an attack on a synthesizer that's as heavy as the Clash or as heavy as any as any of the death metal bands or even like Deep Purple or trying to hit hard. You're trying to hit something, and sometimes synthesizers are looked at as, oh, that's a pop machine, that's a dance machine, but
True.
you can actually have a dirtier sound if you use like a Moog and you're running through filters and you're running through all kinds of weird things. You can get it sounding distorted as hell.
Yeah.
um,
No, I
and,
agree.
and I kind of
I
like to do that.
Yeah, no, I can hear it, and I listen to some of your music. I can hear that for sure. Um, I totally agree. I think because my dad was a guitar player too, like I went towards electronic music, but I wanted to do something alternative still because I do play guitar as well. So like I have that sort of like rock adjacent like background, but I don't want to do just that kind of music because I don't listen to just like guitar metal music. That's not a lot of people meet me and think that's all I like, and that's just very inaccurate. Like to what I actually like, which is why I do kind of like cross a lot of genres in my music. Like my music has a lot of different influences, and I've always like even before I had my bandmate, I was always like I want to do every kind of music. I don't know why I can't. I'm from
Yeah,
Minnesota. We have Prince there who did like all
yeah,
kinds of
yeah,
music. So to
yeah.
me,
I
it
mean,
was like, why do I need to limit myself? But it is a marketing tool. Like you have to somewhat market yourself some way, but I don't want to
yeah,
like
it's just
limit the
kind of
actual
hard.
sound.
Because the problem is, like, if you put yourself as an electronic musician, some people just think it's like, oh, that's EDM, right?
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
always kind of been in that problem where that's why I came up with the idea of expansive sound. Because like I like jazz, I like punk, but then people see my synths and they think I'm just going to be doing a rave, and that's not exactly what I'm going to do. I might go into like a Genesis, Peter Gabriel Genesis, 10-minute
Yeah.
song.
Awesome.
I like to do that old or a Pink Floyd type of thing, right?
Hmm.
I like to go there, but everybody thinks, oh, you're just gonna. Because I always tell people like electronic music started with these guys on these like Keith Emerson on these massive like modular synths, and bands like Pink Floyd doing this serious experimentation, and it wasn't just about dance music or happy music. It was very jazz kind of experimental or classical kind of structures in it. And that's where I think the cool thing about the new wave is it made it, like you said, more digestible. If people can dance to it, then they're gonna not worry about the complexity of it, even though it can be complex. That's why I think the heart of Prince is his stuff on the surface. It seems like it's simple, when you actually get under the covers,
Oh
it's like,
God,
wow,
no,
it's not that simple at
no,
all.
no. He's literally like one of the best musicians that I've ever walked the planet, probably. So it's like, yeah, no, I'd agree. And I think it's funny too, because like I do make like more high tempo dance music. Like I like to dance, but I'm a very serious, well, not I'm serious, but musically I'm kind of heavier though. So it's like, even when I'm
Hmm.
making dance music, it's kind of dark, if that makes sense. It's like a dark dance.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I relate to
Well,
um,
I've always
those
dark side.
qualities. Mhm. Yeah.
It's kind of like that, like to be in a child in the '70s, everybody starts talking about the dark side. They start thinking Star Wars vibe, whatever. But but yeah, I think I always did like I say, the punk aesthetic. Even though I'm a
Yeah.
synthesizer player, and they say, what's that?
Me
What's
too.
that got to
Me
do with
too.
punk? I like bands like the Replacements, bands like Who's Could Do,
Yeah. Yeah.
like anything on Sub Pop. I was like, and they would say, why are you listening to that? You're a keyboard player. I say, because I'm getting inspired by their kind of hard edge, and I want to bring that kind of like what Trent did and what Brian Eno used to do with Bowie. If you listen to
Yeah.
some of the experimental stuff that Bowie did, it's like very out of left field, but it had a lot of punk in it. Kind of, it was like new wave before new wave. Brian Eno and what they were doing in Berlin is like that is like at the beginning in some ways of the new wave, the stuff that they were doing. Um, but yeah, I think it's just interesting when you have a little bit of a dark side to something. And
Yeah.
even if you could make something like, I think Churches is really interesting to me because they have this kind of very poppy sound, but the lyrics are dark. And if you read the lyrics, they're like, wow, that's heavy. But the song seems poppy, but the lyrics
Yeah.
are super heavy. I kind of like the dichotomy of you could either do the reverse of that, but
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to do that.
Yeah, I love the combination of like really dark things and like things that aren't supposed to go together with it. I think that's
Yeah,
just great. That's totally like my that I yeah,
the way you
100%.
like to do
I,
things.
I can relate. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
So
100%.
So when you're writing a song, like I think we talked a lot about your reference points, but maybe you want to talk a little bit more about your influences,
Sure.
just to let people know.
Man, there's a lot of them. So I guess I take from a lot of kind of like I was mentioning. I guess I love all the like really good artists. I love like Bowie and Kate Bush and Nina Simone and like like the people you were saying like Joy Division and Depeche Mode and all that 80s stuff. Um love of course Nine Inch Nails. I love a lot of heavy metal music. I love a lot of I love like hip hop. I love like funk. I'm gonna say I love all kinds of music. I don't know. There's like a lot to say. Trying to
Well, I
think
think
like
being a fan is the core of being a musician because I think the more things you listen to as a musician, the more innovative you get. Like if you just stay in your lane, then you
true.
might be the best person. Like, a blues guy might just stay in the blues. But a lot of times they'll branch into jazz, branch into soul, and maybe branch into a little bit of rock. And when they do that, then it gets wider. But if they just say, well, I'm just going to do Delta blues, that's all I'm going to do. That's cool, but you stay like in a little niche. And some guys want to stay in a niche, that's okay, fine. That's what they're known for. But I've always been very interested in people who have phases in their career, and when you go from one record to the next, they kind of are growing as a musician. And you're like, oh, this is this phase. Like Miles Davis had different phases. He was doing the bebop, they did the fusion,
Mhm.
they did the free jazz. It's kind of cool to see somebody go through phases.
I want to do that personally. I want to do like several different kinds of projects. I'm going to do like an electronic, more like lighter project. I want to do like a more like metal sort of based project. I want to do like I've been a like a lighter, more like experimental kind of like songwriting story project. I have like a
Hmm.
lot of the ideas kind of,
Oh,
but
like a concept album.
yeah, kind of like yeah, like where it's like a full out concept and the kind of thing where like a song, it's every song is like a little story and it's like completing the whole
Like
story.
Tommy or Quadrophenia, or like in the 70s, well, in the 60s you have Tommy, and then in the
Yeah.
70s the Who do it again with like Quadrophenia, and those to me are kind of like the peak of Pete Townshend's like rock opera tendencies. And then you get Pink Floyd doing their kind of pseudo rock operas. They're kind of a little looser than what Townsend put together. And then you have bands like Styx that did things that were kind of okay. Is that really as tight as what Pete did? But yeah, I mean, in the 70s, you have a lot of rock operas. Meatloaf, a lot of his stuff is like rock opera. Um, but I think it's cool to have like a theme. And in some albums, you could think like
Yeah.
Sgt. Pepper's isn't a concept album per se, but and then maybe it is because it seems so tight, but it doesn't really have a story. But somehow they all the songs fit as an album. It feels like a project, but it doesn't flow like Tommy. It doesn't tell the story of the deaf and dumb blind boy. It doesn't do that, but it feels like a unique like concept.
I kind of wonder if like they put it together later that oh this could work as a concept like when the Beatles were doing that album and or if it was I wish I wouldn't know. I'd have to like there's probably writing and stuff on it from the fans, but I did try to do kind of like a concept with my first album, and it sort of is a story. It's actually just an EP, and it was like the story of like it was supposed to be like heaven and hell and outer space. Like basically is what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be like
Like
the character
duality.
goes through hell and she dies and then she is alive and she's in heaven in the like last half. So like some of the songs are like guitar and they're like darker and that's hell, and then the more electronic, like organ, orchestra songs were like Heaven. Then I next EP after that had a lot of remixes from it, but also had like, so it was kind of still in the same world, but there were a couple like new things where I was exploring like this twisted like stuff with like being a woman in America kind of thing. It was sort of
Oh
like
yeah,
this, like a
there's a
dark,
lot of content for
almost
that.
political, yeah, almost political, kind of like about sexual politics and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I want to do like more fantasy concept albums though, because I'm not necessarily interested in being like a political artist, because that sounds awful. I don't want to sit and talk about politics all day. I'm
No,
much
it's
more
kind of like
interested in like,
I think even Dylan kind of got burned out. Like Dylan was known in his like Arlo Guthrie, Woody Guthrie stage as being a protest singer. And I saw the
I would never.
I saw a Scorsese documentary, and he was very uncomfortable with being called like a political singer. Though I mean, his music is inherently in the '60s. Some of it is very political. Um, and then he kind of went into more singer-songwriter abstract stuff when he started doing stuff with the band. You know, it becomes more Americana, more abstract, weird concepts, telling stories, but they're stories about stuff happening in the 1930s and 40s. He just starts creating all these like weird characters and stories, trying to distance himself from that kind of protest music. But then once in a while, he would come back and do something like Idiot Wind,
I
that
think
actually has statements in it, that you could relate to different things going on. But um, yeah, it's just interesting. I think it's as an artist, you kind of like it's like how you feel at the time and the age that you're in. Some
yeah.
things might drive you to become more political. You might not have expected that you would do it, and it just
Yeah.
happens.
That's kind of what happened with the Make Love to America Gently with the Chainsaw. When I say it out loud, it sounds so funny. But that's kind of why it just sort of like happened that way. But I have no interest in like being a political artist. I don't want to talk about politics. I want to write like fantasy stories. For me, it's kind of been like about escapism. I really admire like you were kind of saying, people who create characters for stories. Because I love writing too. Like I'd like to write a book eventually. Um, or maybe even a couple. That's why I'm really drawn to artists like Nick Cave and things like that, who are very character based, but
True.
still have like great instrumentals and still like really exciting music. I like music that's like an exciting experience. I don't like to, I'm not going to write something that makes me fall asleep, which is why it tends to be kind of on the darker side or the more dramatic side, because that's usually what happens. I like really dramatic chord progressions. I like really dramatic stories. I like characters. So yeah, I mean, my next project will probably, I still do write from my own feelings, of course, and it has to be like a character you relate to, but it's word wise. And when writing a song, like when the song is in its initial forming phases, if I don't have like a strong imaginative idea of like what the song is, it's not going to interest me to keep working on it. So
Mhm.
having characters and stories and things like that helps. Even
So
if I am
you're
exploring something personal, like it does help though to have like a sort of like a fantasy version of the story in my head.
So a lot of times I like to get into like the heads of the musicians I talk to in terms of like your stage persona. Like a lot of times, the good example of what I'm trying to talk about is David Bowie. When he started, he's David Jones, didn't really work, came out, did Ziggy, started creating characters, started creating stage personas. Between Lad Insane, Ziggy, then White Duke, and it worked for him. And then you see that like even like Freddie Mercury from Queen, he had this over exaggerated version of himself on
Yeah.
stage. And even Prince, they like the kid, like every album, Purple Rain, he's the kid. You get the Parade, he's this other character. Christopher Tracy. He goes every time he did an album, he created like a persona to go with the album, like a stage, like a version of him for Sign of the Times is not the same as the one for Purple Rain or the one for Around the World in a Day. He came in like different outfits, different attitude. Do you feel like do you approach music that you feel like you got to come up with like a persona to go with the theme of what you're doing?
Totally. I think that helps you be braver to be out there. Like it helps with your bravery. I think it helps with the not being bored. If I had to, like, if I had to stay in where I was with my first project for the next projects, I would be really bored of it and not want to do it. So I do like to explore different like facets of my personality with each project that I do. So I think that's kind of, I think there's a reason it usually happens with really good artists in that way. You know, everything about it, from how you present yourself to the sounds itself, the titles, the lyrics, it's all, I mean, it's all calculated, right? Like, it's not like we're coming up with this from our, you know, we're thinking about it. So for me too, yeah, it's always helped with my bravery. Queen of Stack Opera was always a more exaggerated version of me, kind of.
It's like the other you. It's like, is it like the other you? Because I like to look at the idea, like Victorian poets had this idea of like the looking glass and the other, right? And so if you get into old style poetry, they would like the looking glass is used all the time to kind of represent that person that you look at in the looking glass is like the other version of yourself. And maybe that self is either more brave or they're afraid or whatever you project on that other. And then a lot of time musicians, like when they're on stage, they're that other you know, they're that other me, really other me. But yeah, I think that's, I think every time you go on stage, there is this other person. In order to be a musician on stage, you do kind of go into like a trance, or you get into the state where you're feeling the muse, or you're feeling the universe. You feel like you're feeling like a keyboard player. Like I get, you know, you see him, we get in the zone. I don't even know if he asked me, what were you doing? I'm like, I mean, I was in the zone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't know what I was doing. It's like, he asked me 2 hours after the show. It's like, did you know what you were doing? I was like, kind of just went with it. You know, it just felt, you feel it. You know, I think any music guitar players feel it when they do their solo. Could they explain why they did their solo the way they did? It was like, probably not. They just felt it, you know, and that's the way where they went.
You know? Yeah, 100%. And like, especially because I mostly sing live, and that singing is like, it's like a difficult instrument because it's inside of your body. You know what I mean? So it's very, it requires like a certain extent of bravery. But like, I literally like scream in my shows sometimes. So it's like this very exaggerated, aggressive version of myself, like where I like lie on the floor and I'm like screaming, and it's like crazy, and it's just like bizarre. And I'm not saying I don't sing too from a technical place, because I do, but it's like I always yeah, and I like extreme artists. I've always liked really extreme artists with extreme visuals, people who are like really daring and brave and doing extreme things, because I'm bored with, I don't know, I guess I'm just a weird person. I don't know.
No, I think that's part of music. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Hendrix was like super extreme, you know, I think Prince kind of took a lot of his stagecraft, but like he would just be, you know, totally wild, you know, doing flips, you know, setting the guitars on fire, and just, and one time I think Bill Graham told him, like, why don't you are such a good player, why don't you stop doing all the pyrotechnics and sit down and actually play it? Like, I think one time, and then he got pissed off at what Bill Graham told him, and he said, okay, I'll do it. So he did one set without moving around. He didn't jump around. He didn't try to play with his teeth. He just played straight so he would sound really good. And then he said, was that cool? And he said, yeah. Then he went to the next set and he was just jumping around, flipping and doing all the stuff that he liked to do. You know, they made him like the stage performer version.
It's way more fun. I mean, I took dance classes and stuff when I was in high school. So like, I also can move around on stage, and I like to do that. That's why I was saying I like up tempo, even if it's dark, but I want it to be like up tempo and danceable, because that's like a huge part of why I like music. Like, I want to be able to move and groove. It's not like a thing where I'm just like sitting and like, sad. That's not my personality. Yeah. It's not what I enjoy. Like, I'm sad. I mean, it's dark. Like I said, I'm not from like I'm not from like a bed of roses or anything, but it's fun. Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah, I think that's what the progressive bands like Yes and Pink Floyd got accused of in the 70s, of like turning their back on the audience and concentrating on trying to make the performance sound so perfect that they forgot about the presentation. And then that kind of drove the punk movement to say, like, I don't have to be Jimmy Page. I don't have to be Dave Gilmour. I don't have to be Robert Plant. I don't have to have these great voices and this great technical ability. I can just come out there like Joe Strummer and not be a guy that really can sing technically, but he has like the attitude and honesty that was like, wow, that was refreshing. in the same way like
Eh,
Kurt Cobain came and did it, and that
yeah.
was refreshing, you know.
Yeah. Creativity is something you can't train. Like you can train your voice, you can train, you can learn all the scales or whatever, but creativity and guts and performance, like having your performance aura, because like I've seen a lot of shows, I've seen some really good performers, and it's not even just the technical aspect that makes them good. It's how original you are, because there are tons of technical musicians that are totally boring to me that I don't care to listen to. They aren't interesting to me. It's
Yeah.
it's not to say like I don't admire their technique, but if there's no creativity there, I don't really care. If it's about what are you saying, like what are you saying with your music, that's what's going to get people interested. Like what are you saying, what are you making your audience feel when they hear this? I think a lot of people, especially like in Minnesota, for instance, there are a lot of really good musicians there, and a lot of them get really caught up on like chord progressions and like jazz and like stuff like that. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
like, but what about like a good song? Like, like you
Yeah.
guys are so caught up in being impressive to other musicians. Like the core essence of like the good song isn't there. I don't know. Like my bandmate is really talented, and it's interesting to me that sometimes he'll only write with like four chords or something, but it's like just sounds phenomenal. And it's like,
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the Ramones, I mean, think about the Ramones. They have this guttural attack. It's very simple, but it just hits, and it's poppy, and it doesn't have to be. You think about the early Clash, you get the bands like Husker Du, and a lot of stuff on Sub Pop. It's just like the punk aesthetic doesn't mean that you have to know all the Beatle chords, right? That you just to come out and actually say something that hits with the audience, and then you're like, okay, you get these like punk or like post punk bands or just that kind of spirit.
yeah,
This always to me was like when I first heard the Replacements, like Sorry Ma, I forgot to take out the trash album, and it was punk. It was like Clash. It was like Sex Pistols type stuff. It was like very raw. It wasn't as poppy as they got. They got a lot more poppy. Um,
yeah,
but that was like raw, and there was something about that raw nature. I was like, wow, I like that. I like bands
yeah,
that can come out and maybe they're not Jimmy Page, they're not Led Zeppelin, they're not Pink Floyd, and sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes, like maybe if you're in the basement with your headphones, it's cool to listen to Dark Side of the Moon because of all the work that went into it. But sometimes you just want to punk out. You listen to Green Day or The Clash or Nine Inch Nails. It's like, yeah, I don't need that technical aesthetic to be
I think
happy.
your I think your talent can be innate without it being overly like I said, I'm not
Run out.
saying I'm not saying like you should never try to get better or anything. I'm not
No, no.
saying that, but I am saying like the song core and what you're saying and your creativity and your guts and your personality is what people are actually going to be more interested in. Like you can always clean up other elements of it. And like as you develop, like as a singer, like I've gone through phases where I sounded completely different from what I sound like now. And I'm glad I did go through those phases because I think it helped me learn what kind of voice I would like to I want to have. And I have a certain taste in vocals, and there are a lot of vocalists who can be really good with voice lessons and like technical things, but their voice has no character to me. So when I listen to somebody like I was listening to PJ Harvey yesterday, and it was
Oh,
like her voice
she's
is
phenomenal. Yeah, she's
yeah, like her voice has so much character. Like you can tell she thought about like emoting in every, even if it's not like an overly complicated vocal line or anything. Like she's not trying to like hit like Whitney Houston notes, but
yeah,
it's like so
yeah. I
but
think
it's
it's the
like
same
so
thing
thought
with
out.
like a Liz Fair. I love Liz Fair, Exile in Guyville, right? And I like her kind of. She doesn't have like a Whitney Houston voice. That's not what it's
Yeah.
about. She
Yeah.
has this kind of deadpan, kind of Lou Reed, Velvet Underground take on stuff. Yeah, it's coming from this underground kind of girly sound is this kind of punkish post punk, her post punk interpretation, and I always like that. I always try to tell people you don't have to have the perfect 5-octave voice. or the baritone voice, or like a lot of times, like if you listen to Motown, he's like, you would think, well, there's no way I can sing at all, right? Because you got to be like Smokey, you got to be like Marvin Gaye, you got to be like the Four Tops. Those guys are just like they're perfect
Yeah,
voices. There was a whole period where that's all you couldn't even get to the microphone unless you could be like a Smokey or be like Sinatra. They wouldn't even let you near the microphone.
that is
And
true. It's a different time.
so now
Uh,
Dylan kind of opened it up where like, where's he coming from? He's coming from like outer space, but it's like he has different variations of his voice too. He could do like a Nashville Skyline version of Dylan, where his voice is, wow, that's really pretty. I mean, he actually could get the tone. But then other times he does this kind of Arlo Guthrie kind of nasal version of himself that was just a kind of caricature of himself. And if people would say, well, that's really, you either love Dylan or you hate Dylan. But like, I think this thing about him is like, he doesn't just have one voice. If you listen to his catalog, his voice changes all the time. It's like different versions of himself.
yeah, my parents were big Dylan fans. I like some of his music, but I'm not like a. I do respect the like songwriting though. I can see how it's like
Yeah, it's
how
probably
it's
more the
important.
songwriting structure is the way his like lyricism is like fantastic. But
Yeah, and I started out kind of like a heavy like I was very good at lyrics. Like that was I mean I played multiple instruments, but like I was really good at lyrics, so that was like my thing. And I had a really weird delivery, and like I got through weird phases. And I like to technically sing too. Like I really it sounds weird, but I like to try to sound like I love like my warm up song is I always try to sing Michael Jackson. Those are like my warm up songs.
oh, so
Like
you get the pitch stuff right. Yeah, but then you
well,
got like yeah, that's a really great vocalist. So I mean, if you're going to try to like get in the pitch of a great vocalist in the kind of
yeah,
tradition like a Motown vocalist,
and I like how his vocal is like it's technically great, but he's not like I'm not a huge fan of scales and stuff. Like I don't listen to
hmm
singers that like hit all. I don't like that, but I do like to be on pitch and sing well. And I like
hmm
that Michael Jackson's voice is like well, his voice is so high that it can kind of hit
crazy
my
raw style.
range. Like
Yeah,
our ranges are similar because his voice is so high, but also I just like how he delivers things with yeah. And
he
so
has
I
like a
actually
really interesting kind of an attack that's like playing an instrument. Like when somebody's like scatting on a guitar, he can scat with his voice. It's kind of like a kind of African American kind of in the blues and other types
yeah,
of African American art forms. There's this kind of scatting thing that he brought into pop music and was able to
yeah,
do his kind of attacks and weird, kind of strange vocalizations. They're very kind of they attack. He's got this interesting attack, and he's like staccato kind of getting things in, and you're like, wow, that's really weird how he can do that. And it's kind of James Brown used to do it, but he was doing it
yeah.
from that heavy funk, and then Michael's doing it at a higher register. But James was doing it lower, you know. But
I
it's
would say
interesting.
both of them do kind of like the like blueprint of like rock singing, to be honest. Like I
Yeah,
think more than anything, I think like I think race can tend to skew people's like view of genre. Like sometimes I hear certain artists, I'm like, that sounds like rock. Why are they putting that in the R&B category? Like The Weeknd, they'll always say he's like R&B. I'm like, that dude is like pop new wave. Like, what are you
yeah,
talking about? Like he's doing like industrial ambient like he makes music like my music. Like that
yeah.
is what
The
he sounds
problem
like
is
to
like you
me.
get thrown in R&B is if you're if you're a certain tone,
Yeah.
no
And I
matter
mean, I'm
what
not
you do, they throw you in R&B, even if you're doing like, like if you're doing like a punk thing, if you're coming in and you're doing something really industrial or heavy punk, and then
yeah,
they're like, oh well, that's a black band, so they're like
yeah,
they can't be on the rock station, and that was kind of like when Living Color kind of tried to show me that you could be a heavy metal rock black band. And everybody's
yeah,
like,
they're
wow,
great.
you can? You can? I didn't think you could. Well, you forgot about
Yeah.
Hendrix?
I mean, like
you know,
literally invented the genre. Yeah,
that's why
it's
when people
pretty
say, well, rock,
ridiculous.
rock is this, and it's like, but wasn't Hendrix like a rock god?
Yeah, for sure. He was
It
like
was like,
he was everything. I mean,
So it was
my
like
first
for me,
my
I
first
always
guitar was like a replica of one of his guitars. Like that was the first guitar I ever learned on. But yeah,
that
um,
always kind of gets me because, like, I think the cross genre thing, or people trying to stay in lanes, I've
yeah,
always been very against. I've always like, yeah, why don't you take like a Nashville country song that Johnny Cash did, and the train thing he used to do with his band, how they could sound like they're a train. And sometimes you can take that and you can bring that into other things,
well,
right?
he
And
he especially translates really well to like rock covers of his
yeah,
songs. Like are the like the shit. Like they're really cool. He
yeah,
can
well, they got
translate
this
well.
kind of. He was like this outlaw. He was doing like this outlaw
Yeah,
country. He's the original outlaw country. Man in Black. You got the train coming from Folsom Prison. He's going. It's like he's going there, and he's always kind of identifying with the bad guy. He's always
yeah.
saying, like, yeah, I'm the boy. The whole song of the boy named Sue is like a story of like this, like, criminals. And
It's
he's
very
kind of,
his attitude was
talk.
very rock. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very rock attitude. It's kind of like the Stones. It's like a Keith Richards Jagger attitude, you know.
I
But
I think in some ways like rock in the traditional form is kind of dead, but the attitude like lives on and it's going to like evolve in many other ways. And that's why like I'm not interested in doing a traditional rock band is because I want to be part of the future of music. I don't want to be part of the past. And to me, it's kind of like we've already done that so many times. To me, I hear more innovation coming from like the beat, the beats like more that are more popular in like in hip hop right now or like in
yeah,
synth pop, even like some of it, the stuff that's coming out like sonically, not necessarily what they're saying usually, but sonically fucking like very evolutionary like stuff. I want to be part of the future. I don't want to be part of the past. So that's why I never, even though I do love that stuff, I'm not saying anything against that stuff, but that is why I never, that's why I didn't commit to like a real rock band really.
I think it's like a real rock band, like a modern take on a rock structure, like a modern take on a Led Zeppelin. Doesn't have, maybe it's not Zeppelin. Maybe it's more coming from like a Guns N' Roses thing, because the Guns N' Roses, everybody said bands like Guns N' Roses when they came out couldn't happen, and then they happened. Because or like even like a Def Leppard, like Def Leppard showed up in an age where bands like that weren't really doing well, and then they came on the scene and like bam. So once in a while you'll get like a Def Leppard or a Guns N' Roses. But lately we haven't seen that. We haven't seen another band like that break through. So it seems like, oh, rock's dead because we don't have another actual Rose. We don't have that. Um, but
I
you
think
never know. Somebody might be inspired and come at it like the way Nirvana came on the scene and kind of brought back punk with grunge. Everybody thought punk was never going to come back.
that's true. I mean, I think like it I think like I said, I think if it does come back, it's going to come back with synthesizers. That's like what I personally think about it. Like if we ever had another Nirvana moment, it would be like with like distorted synthesizers and
Yeah,
probably
I
some
kind of the
weird
stuff.
genre meshing. If Kurt Cobain was like now, it would be something like that. Like he would
Well,
probably
yeah, he'd probably be using a Moog or a Prophet running through a
like
Eurorack,
he'd
going through
probably
like
like he'd probably like rap and scream. Like he'd be like one of those like screaming rappers. That's what like Kurt Cobain would be now. That would be cool. Like we need to find somebody who has that kind of like emotional authenticity. Maybe there are people. I guess I'm probably like
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, I
there are.
think in the underground, I talk to a lot of emerging and underground artists, and I've talked to like some Australian rock bands that nobody knows about, right? And they're very inspired by like heavy metal, but they're coming at it from like an Australian perspective. Or I talked to some bands like in Berlin, and there's like a heavy metal scene in Berlin, and it's not just industrial and electronic. There's actually a lot of rock going on in Germany, and I'm like, that was really interesting to me because I wasn't hearing it here. But when I interviewed the bands, that was like, wow,
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of cool
Germ
stuff going on.
Germany loves like industrial and metal. Yeah, there's a huge like goth scene in Germany for
They're
sure.
really very much into it. But then I talked to some guys in the Netherlands or Iceland, and it's like synthwave. It's like new
Hmm.
wave stuff going
Yeah, I
on.
can
But
see
it's
that.
like every scene's different. But
That's true. In America, we have Well, we have all kinds of people. I think because America's so big, it's different too. Depends on what part of the country you're in, determines how popular something is there. I mean, like they're played. Like I've never grown up somewhere where country was really popular. For instance, like I've never grown up somewhere like that. But if you look at the sales, country music sells so much. Like
Yeah, it's like it's hitting like
sells so much.
hitting the
So
South and
who?
the middle of America. They're like totally country fans. They're like fanatics.
Yeah, and
They're
I'm
just
like,
so into
I'm, and I'm like from Minneapolis, so we're like, I don't know what the country, what the fuck is that? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
anybody, not besides
Well,
Johnny Cash and like a couple of people. I like Dolly Parton, like Johnny Cash. That's about it, really.
but I mean, my mom was from Morgantown, West Virginia, so every summer I would go to the coal mining area, and all you heard, I was living in Massachusetts most of the year, and then I go to Morgantown, West Virginia, and all you hear is like Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash, and you see like all the old school guys from the Grand Ole Opry, and they're watching the Grand Ole Opry. Like I come in there like in Massachusetts, I'm not watching that. I show up in
Yeah.
'74. My grandpa's like, sit down and watch this. I was like, what's this? It's like, oh, it's the Grand Ole Opry. I'm like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that. But I kind of like force fed it, and I said, well, it's not so bad. For 2 months out of the year, I had to listen to it, and I said, well, then I started to like appreciate some of it,
There's some
and realize,
seriously talented songwriters. A lot of it's not my thing, but some of the like a couple songs, like I like Johnny Cash and I like a couple Dolly Parton songs. I think
Glenn
that,
Campbell. Some of the Glenn Campbell stuff is pretty cool, but yeah,
yeah,
it's just your taste because like some people can get into it. Like if you're coming from a punk aesthetic and you say if I tell some kid I like Glenn Campbell, they're gonna give me the look. It's like what? It's
that's
like
true. I think like outlaw country is most palatable for like more like alternative like rock or pop
yeah,
fans probably.
Johnny
It's like the
Cash. People
outlaw
can
stuff.
respect him. I think a lot of
Yeah.
modern if you show them like something from Folsom Prison, they're like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
They'll
Badass.
get it's badass. And if you see him wearing all black and giving people the finger, and
Yeah.
like Johnny was like a punk. He was the punk. Like he was a rock star. I mean, he was
Yeah.
doing stuff rock stars weren't even doing. He's getting put in jail. He's getting arrested.
It's true.
flipping people off. He's swearing at
Now
people.
now I want to watch that movie about him. I'm gonna watch that after this. That sounds good.
He's just a really interesting guy, and his music catalog is just fantastic. But yeah, we kind of went all over the place. But I want to ask about: are you targeting like your next album or EP or project for the next year, or is it going to be something like a future thing?
What did you say? Targeting or touring?
Well, targeting for your next like release. Like, are you going to be working on an EP or an album or singles?
Oh,
I mean, what are you doing
I
for your next project?
well, well, I have a single that I'm going to be releasing soon, and it's just going to be on Bandcamp for a couple months. I'm really excited about the song because I think it's one of the best songs I've ever done. It is a little bit lighter than some of the things some of my audience might be used to that I've done, but I think they'll really like it because it's still very genuine and very somber, but like very well done. I love it, and my bandmate did an amazing job. Um, and I don't know, we just came together. We wrote this great song, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to release that. I'm working on my next project. I'm not sure where it's going to be. I have I have some other things I'm going to be releasing, but yeah, I'm working on new music. I'm going to be playing some shows this summer
Hmm.
to just kind of for fun in LA, really. Mostly though, I think it'll be a full album. I'm going to try to do a lot more. Um, Probably like I don't know. I don't want to speak on it too much because I have no idea what it'll end up. But I am writing for it.
So you have a goal of an album, and the single, do you think would be part of the album, or would be a standalone?
No, it'll be part of the album for sure, and we're releasing that soon. So I'm really excited for that to be out. But yeah, and I'm gonna be I'm working on new music as we speak. I have a couple songs that are for sure gonna come out, I think, and yeah,
Are
I'm
you
really
are you
excited.
booked for like any summer shows?
Yeah. I am going to be announcing I'm going to be announcing some nice LA shows probably like tomorrow, to be honest.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm playing at like the Mint and Bar Sinister and like a couple cool venues
Okay, if
in
you have any of
LA.
that, you could send that to me, and I can include it in the podcast description if you want any hype for it. Because I can, if
Sure,
you've got details, just send it to me. I will be publishing in like the next hour, so in order for it to be part of it, I need it in the next hour. But
sure.
if you got that list, just shoot it to me through our normal communication, and I can include it.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I will. And I'm excited to do those shows. It's gonna be doing some live mooging. I'm gonna try to, and some
Cool.
singing,
That's all.
and yeah, mostly probably just like some dark bass noises and stuff. But yeah, like I'm gonna try to put together a hopefully pretty creative show. And I also have a show that's a virtual show um, on Sunday with this company that has a that kind of I
Oh,
kind of have like a sponsorship thing with
or
them.
online? It's an
Yeah,
online thing. Yeah, that's
yeah. This
cool.
is an online show, Ursa Live, which I put on my Instagram. If I really hope people can attend that because that'll be cool too. And yeah, I'm doing the shows more just kind of like something to do while I'm writing the next album because I want my next album to be like big, ideally. Like I'm trying to make a big career step with my next album, which is why it's taking so long in a way. It's because
Do you
like it's all
find?
about it's not even just the music. It's not about just creating the music. It's about like the business aspect of it too.
Yeah.
I don't want to have like I don't want to just release a bunch of material and not promote it properly, you know. So
Do you find if you
um,
play when you're working on an album and you go out and do a show, that when you try new songs in front of the audience, does that help with the development of the song by trying it in front of people live? Make you make different choices, okay, based on how it feels when you do it live?
I think yeah, I think it helps. I think playing live can help like a musician figure out kind of like writing wise like what people want to hear in those kind of environments too, especially like that was
Hmm.
why one of the things I realized when I started playing live, I was like, man, I have too many mid-tempo songs. Like I need some higher tempo songs because
To
like
get the crowd going.
yeah, and like vocal wise, like I want to do these like there is a song like where some of the vocal parts were written because of the live version of it because I wrote
Mm.
those parts like spontaneously during the live version and it helped develop the real version of it.
Yeah, I
So yeah,
find that kind of technique of doing like a stream of consciousness thing, or like what I found is I actually will go live on Facebook from my studio and do a rehearsal just cold. And what I do it because I want to just like force myself to not stop and start. So I'll do a live rehearsal and just go with whatever works and not have to keep on going back into my machines and start and stopping on a DAW, but actually run through a bunch of new material and see how it evolves if I force myself to play it live in front of people, which is
I
kind
think
of, I heard like Frank Zappa used to do that a lot. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to try it.
I could see that. Yeah, Frank Zappa, I'm pretty sure had like a lot of people at his house all the time, and I know that because my dad broke his lamp. So like I know that he was just like having a house full of musicians all the time. But I do find too like I writing with somebody is like in the room with you is like wow you can I think there's a lot of like the bedroom producer thing is a huge
Yeah.
part of
What's
the
going
music
on?
right now. But for me, while I write alone and stuff, and some songs do start that way, it's kind of like it feels like the best things actually come when I'm with my bandmate and we're like sitting and it's kind of about like almost like impressing each other. You know what I mean? Because then it
Yeah.
just comes together with an energy and the song always comes together in a way that to me I think is just more it's just better, you know?
Well, I think
And
it's like
like
the demo. I think like if you think about like if you're in a band, right, and you got a primary songwriter who writes the demo, and then he presents it to the band. Once the band gets it, then maybe that 808, and maybe the bass line from the Moog get done by a bass player, right, and in the 808 gets done by a drummer. And so
oh yeah.
suddenly, what happens is the demo could be still used as a song, but what happens when the whole band does it, it changes it because each musician's talent comes to play, and then it usually enhances it because if somebody's been a drummer for 20 years or 10 years or whatever, they're going to do something you can't do on an 808. you know, or maybe a
Yeah.
bass player is going to do something that you couldn't do on your Moog because they can do stuff, on the strings, but.
Well, even those people who like are known for playing like 12 instruments and stuff and sitting alone and being able to like write, all those people worked with other people, like, mostly everybody, like,
Yeah, because sometimes it's better to give it to somebody else. I mean, you might give the line, you did a good line, but the other guy interprets your line better than you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even if it was your core idea, like some of my songs, it'd be like, I just like wrote some chords or whatever. And then my bandmate like got and I wrote my, the vocal and I had the song and my bandmate took it to like another level because we did it together, it creates a whole new, better thing. And I mean,
like
that's the point, right? Trying to sound good. Trying to create something really good.
Do you work with producers that like enhance your work or challenge you to kind of rewrite your work?
Every song is different, really. I really only work with one person usually. Sometimes I collaborate with people, but it really just depends on the song. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Depends on the song.
What I've found is a lot of people, if they work with producers that have a tendency to make you like rewrite a lot of the song, at least the producers I see in the way the world works today, is if you come with a demo, then the producer has a set like style that they have. And if you didn't match that style, then your song's probably getting 80% restructured to match how they do things. That's why I like singer-songwriters to kind of stick to their guns and say, I want it to be like this, just enhance it.
I was going to say, I mean, it really, like, it's not typically like totally restructuring it. Sometimes it'll be like, hey, this should be the chorus because this part is really good. And like, as a songwriter, you can't really tell what is the best part of the song.
But I think that's enhancing it. But what I'm saying, the extreme mode is somebody like taking all your clips and doing like a 360 change of the whole structure, which changes it from your demo. Like it's like 180-degree difference from the original demo. And maybe it's better, but I think sometimes you want, if you're like, a PJ Harvey or a Liz Phair, they tended to stick to their guns and keep their structure the way it was, and it didn't get it glossed. They kept it raw. And if you listen, that actually is kind of cool that they kept it raw because it makes them unique.
I mean, I think if you're working with somebody who respects you and your craft and what you do and like understands what you're going for, they'll be able to keep like the essence of the song, right?
Yeah, it's the core.
And just help enhance it.
Yeah, like, the essence is the main thing of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, no, because I'm really fortunate. Like my bandmate and I really understand each other musically, if that makes sense. Like we really understand what each other likes. We have really, really like almost identical music taste, which is very rare, and you don't usually find that. I've actually worked with a lot of people.
So, as Queen of the Static Opera, are you like a duo? Would you call yourselves like a duo, or is there a bigger band than that?
I mean, I've played with live people before. It's kind of like a band in the way Nine Inch Nails is a band. Like I'm the front person. I'm like the Trent Reznor almost of the band. Not quite, but sort of. And but like I always will probably work with him. Maybe yeah, I don't know. Like maybe we'll get it engineered by a really professional engineer.
Yeah, engineering is a whole
masters
different
it. Something like that. Yeah. I mean,
that's
so
like its own art.
I mean, I could just say I don't want to say he's like my producer because I also produce, which is why we usually call each other a band, even though if he's primarily even if he's like I'm more of the singer-songwriter and he's like a better producer than me, and I'm like I'm like the front, but I still produce too, so that's why we call each other.
So it ends up being like a duo because you guys are complementing each other because you got the same vision.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do this like alone initially, but then I just like met him and I actually really liked his music. So I was like, okay, I actually would like to work with this person. And I worked with him and we thought it was awesome and we kept going after that. So.
Okay, well, that's great. I think, we're at the top of the hour, a little bit over. And for our partners, we usually try to keep it around this time. So thank you for being on the program. And like everybody should know that we are actually going to be on Spotify video podcast. And if you didn't know, Spotify has video podcasts now. So this is actually going to get converted to their video podcast format within an hour. We will have permanent links on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and Facebook. So thank you very much for being on the program. And if you, as always, when you're all the guests that we have are extended to come back on when they have another project. So when your album drops, if you want to have an album release episode to push it at that time, let us know and we can help you out.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Everybody go make sure you check that link tree that's been scrolling across the bottom. We always encourage everybody who listens to this or watches this to go out and listen to the band that we talk to, and download, subscribe, favorite, playlist their music. If you dig it, make sure you get involved, hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, hitting the playlist in it. That's very important for musicians, so please do that. Thank you very much, and please listen to Queen of the Static Opera wherever you find their music. Thank you very much for being on.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Are we still live?
Now we're almost up. I hit the